My name is Vineet Malhotra. Well, China has made a complete mockery of the sanction imposed by the United States. US has cracked a whip on Chinese officials in Hong Kong, freezing all their assets in United States by imposing sanctions. The US says that the move is to oppose Chinese oppression in Hong Kong, but China has mocked Trump's move with the official Luo Huning saying that the sanctions do not impact him since he has no properties in the US. He joked he will send $100 to Donald Trump as assets for the president to freeze. So, does this mean that the sanctions won't help control China? What will be a move strong enough to ensure that China is kept in check? We'll talk about this, we'll debate about this with our respected guest. Joining me on the program is Ambassador Dr. Deepak Vohra, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs, Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian, Major General Shashi Asthana, former Additional DG Infantry, Global Strategic Affairs and Defense Analyst, Jayadev Ranade, Member National Security Advisory Board, President Center for China Analysis and Strategy, and Sumit P, last but not the least, political analyst, also joins us to talk more about China. Professor Nalapat, how problematic could it be for China to mock anything pertaining to the United States these days? Because by the hour, if not by the minute, there is something or the other that the United States is initiating that is damaging China. And like they say, if China is provoking the United States, it's more like saying, "Ah, bel mujhe maar."
Well, I want to say that the Chinese must be extremely worried. And frankly, this is, in my view, bravado. Frankly, it's meant to convince their own public opinion that is nothing serious. The reality is that Chinese nationals have several hundreds of billions of private assets of dollars in the United States and in Europe, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada. And they must be worried that what happens if there are more of these individuals get sanctioned. Supposing, for example, you sanction many more individuals and they have got assets in the US and other locations, and it's well known in the US and other locations that they've got assets, well, then they'll have to come to a decision very quickly. Either they maintain their loyalty to the very hardline government of President Xi Jinping, or they maintain their assets by silently perhaps cooperating with the United States and with the anti-China coalition. So frankly, this is an extremely worrying development for a lot of people in China. And I can tell you, so far as Hong Kong is concerned, it's a death blow to Hong Kong. Hong Kong has done well precisely because it was exempted from most of the US sanctions on China. The Hong Kong visa is a very powerful visa. It enables you to travel across the world. It's almost as powerful as the Taiwanese visa. So the reality is that that is going to change. The Hong Kong visa will have the same value or lack of value as the Chinese visa. So I think this is a very, very strong move by the Donald Trump administration. And it shows why the Chinese are desperate that Donald Trump should get defeated in the 2020 polls.
Ambassador Vohra, on 4th of July, Donald Trump categorically said that China will be held accountable for the kind of COVID-19 pandemic and nuisance that the United States is grappling with. Is it fair for Donald Trump to put the entire blame on China? And do you think what we're getting to see, this disconcerted effort by the United States to stop everything Chinese, is perhaps also a political or an election agenda by Donald Trump?
Thank you very much for this opportunity to interact with some of the brilliant people on your panel, and Professor Nalapat has put it across very eloquently. Important things, sir, to remember in the case of Hong Kong and the sanctions that have been imposed and the mockery that is being made. The target in this case is not Hong Kong. The target is Beijing, the target for the Chinese themselves. The idea is for this character called, what's his name, Xi Jinping, to show the world, to show his own people that I am the upholder, the defender of China's territorial integrity, sovereignty, and dignity. That's what he's trying to do. That's what he has provoked the rest of the world into doing. Sir, it's a tough choice for the free world today, including the United States. We are between a rock and a hard place. Do nothing, and the party gets its way, the Communist Party. attack China economically and politically, which is what the world is doing. And Xi Jinping turns around and says, you see this black foreign hand? These guys don't want China to progress. So it's going to be a very, very difficult thing. Also important to remember that Hong Kong has never asked for independence. They have asked for freedom, democracy. That is what the struggle is all about, where I believe many of us are making a mistake. And President Donald Trump, rightly or wrongly, sir, he has the sense to understand that if Hong Kong goes the Chinese way, the Chinese will suffer also as much as anybody else, probably more. As Professor Nalabat pointed out, the Hong Kong passport used to be very strong. They had their own currency, the Hong Kong dollar. They had their own judicial system, independent of them. May I just tell you something very interesting? Hong Kong's economy, approximately $420 billion. Per capita, 60,000 US dollars per annum. Mainland China is 10,000. Hong Kong is 6 times as much. And Macau is 95,000. So the country, the parts of China that followed a democratic system did much better than mainland China, which we tend to forget. So what is happening now, sir? The Chinese deserve it. And if I may adapt the English expression, they are not cutting off their nose to spite their face. They are cutting off their face to punish their nose. The nose being China, the nose being Hong Kong, the face being China.
Sumit, you've traveled to China and Hong Kong extensively. Do you think that what Donald Trump is doing is basically a plank that he got elected on in 2016? He said that China sold to them more than it purchased. The deficit is what he used in order to come into power. And perhaps now the elections are approaching again. He needs another plank.
I think we need, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. The point here is that it is not about, the $600 billion trade deficit which US has with China. That is a concern and that we all know. But the things have gone much bigger. You see, with increasing time, you come and do business with me and you're using my money to kill my systems. How does China operate? If you have a free legal system, your own people will start doing cases against you. If you have a free media, they will use your own media against you. Now, if you have a free market, they will have state-run Chinese companies come and kill your local businesses. That's what Huawei and ZTE are doing across the world. Now, it has gone to a different level. It's not only about trade deficit and business. Now, China is trying to encroach United States, trying to encroach its people, trying to steal their data, use their AI, use their metadata to control the people of US and the world over. And, we know about their AI and metadata and all that. Another important point is that what has happened recently in Hong Kong is a very good move because these are the people who run the agenda of Communist Party of China. It's not the common man of the China roads. He has no say. It's not the common man in Hong Kong. He has no say. These people who are enacted by Communist Party of China, they run their agenda. I have been numerous times to Hong Kong and China, especially to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is the best cosmopolitan place I've ever seen in the world. The highest skyscrapers, the tallest are not in Chicago, they are in Hong Kong. Now, what have they done? With 5% of the expat population, and instantly you have more than 20,000 strong diaspora there, which is doing very well in Hong Kong. They're contributing to the business, they're paying taxes. And instantly there are 250,000 mates which are from various countries which live in Hong Kong. Now, what are they doing? They're trying to, make Hong Kong into China. Incidentally, I'll give you interesting statistics. 86% speak Cantonese. They don't speak Mandarin. 4% speak English. Only 1% speak Mandarin. Only 1% of the Hong Kong speaks Mandarin. So what are you trying to do? You are trying to make Hong Kong into a territory of China. This is a deceit. They have not promised this to the people of Hong Kong. They have not promised this to the Britishers. They have not promised this to the world. They unilaterally impose this NSA. Now, what is NSA? If you speak the truth, you'll be crucified. For example, you and me tomorrow can be arrested if we pass through Hong Kong for running this program. What we are running here is truth. Now, for speaking truth, if you crucify people, that is what NSA is all about. So this move is hitting those actors who are implementing this NSA. Because what Professor Nalpat rightly said and Ambassador rightly said, there are millions and millions of dollars of assets in China. They don't.
Okay. Let me also get an opening remark from Mr. Ranade, and then we'll get a remark from General Asthana as well. Mr. Ranade, do you think that the relationship between the United States, for argument's sake, is going to change in any which way if Joe Biden comes to power? Because the Chinese obviously feel that Trump is not up to the mark.
I think what we are seeing are two things playing out here. One is actually the agenda of the United States, quite apart from Republicans and Democrats. That is the hardliners who are now in the ascendance, but it is the US agenda the US does not want a competitor. It does not want to be dislodged from its number one position. That is the first point. The second is, regardless of whether Trump wins or loses, regardless of whether Biden comes or not, this program, shall I say, against China or aimed at China will continue. I don't think it's going to ease off because, as I said, it's a US agenda. And there is bipartisan support. In fact, in some of these cases, the Democrats are backing it even more strongly than the Republicans. So it will continue. And if I may add one more point here, that the targeting that is being done by the US is highly selective. It is like a precision guided missile hitting them. Now, this particular thing in Hong Kong, they have added 11 people to the list, to the assets list. Now, of these 11, you leave aside the 5 Chinese nationals who are there, the others, I am sure, all have properties in the United States and or Canada. As far as the other 5 are concerned, one has come out openly now, Luo Huining, saying that he doesn't have any money there and he'll send Trump $100. Well, that may be like, the famous last word that he's spoken, but if he has family there, well, let me tell you, they are also vulnerable. And the others, they have kept quiet. They're also likely to have money. Let's not forget that when the proposal first got floated of banning Chinese Communist Party members from getting US visas, there was absolute consternation, which continues to be the case, because most of the people getting advantage are Chinese Communist Party members. So about 300 million people who are the ones who are actually involved in framing policy and running the place. In fact, more than that, but 300 million straight away as direct dependents of or members of the family of Communist Party members are going to be affected. You add on another 100 million maximum. So these policies, these targeting is being done by the US selectively, specifically, and it will have debilitating effects from what I can see on China. And the main target is China.
Absolutely. Debilitating effects, more so on China. General Asthana, in one of the recent symposium that Mike Pompeo spoke at, there was a comparison made between the Cold War between Russia and the US, and now the emerging Cold War between China and the United States. He said, in fact, took quite a liking to that comparison. He said that's true. It can be compared to something what they had with Russia earlier on.
In fact, I have written extensively on that. It's even Cold War 2+0 plus. And in my opinion, it is an undeclared Third World War. The dimensions have changed, the instruments have changed. Now the instrument is economy, the instrument is information warfare, the instrument is cyber, the instrument is technology, and the instrument is military posturing. So therefore, it's a changed scenario as far as the warfare is concerned. It's not going to be, the next World War is not like the previous World War. So therefore, it's a different dimension of warfare. And in that context, I think we are, and this warfare is going to continue for quite some time, as a number of panelists have said, irrespective of who wins the US elections. This is going to continue. And in this warfare, it is not going to be absolutely clear-cut. Now it is, the alliances are also coming out very clearly. There is a democratic natural alliance which is coming out. We may not call it alliance, but then there is a synergy. And similarly, there are some people or some countries on Chinese side, but they are all bankrupt countries who are dependent on China. So that is number one. Number two, this draconian National Security Act will have to be contested. And I think US is doing an absolutely right thing. The reason is very simple. If you see Section 38 of this act, this means that anybody on this planet, if he speaks against Hong Kong or any action if he takes against SAR, even if he criticizes Xi Jinping, then he is culpable as far as PRC is concerned. So this has got a universal implication. And therefore, China cannot get away with this so easily. Thirdly, this mocking exercise Americans are very much used to it. They are a free society. There are a whole lot of people who take out a whole lot of cartoons of the government establishment every day. They don't mind it. But as far as their precision is concerned, as Mr. Ranade brought out, they are absolutely precise. The fact that they are affected, that's why they are talking like this. And let me tell you, today, US visa still has got so much of importance. More than 24 countries, you don't need a visa if you have a US visa. And more than 12 countries, you get visa on arrival. Now, such kind of power of US visa still exists. And it is not easy to dislodge. Chinese don't have that kind of power as of today. Thirdly, as far as the Hong Kong people are concerned, I keep teaching the origins of terrorism to the military officers. That's part of my job. Now, let me tell you, those origins, there are certain theories, they are emerging out. You have to have a dissatisfied society. You have to have a society which has whose freedom has been curtailed. You have to have a society who is now dissatisfied, and a society which is educated, a society who knows how to use internet. And therefore, this is a beginning of another kind of insurgency, which is going to be a modern type of insurgency. And in this, a number of Hong Kong protesters are going to speak against or going to take actions against mainland China. Till now, what they have done is they have been able to muster a nationalism spirit within the mainland China. But the moment you step out of the mainland, whether it is Tibet, Xinjiang, or Hong Kong, their public opinion is against the PRC and Xi Jinping in particular, because his adventurism is troubling everybody, including CCP. The biggest challenge which is going to come out of all these actions is not because they will mock US. The biggest challenge is going to come from CCP members who get affected and who are going to thereafter mock Xi Jinping within their own establishment.
Professor Nalapat, we can compare the recent standoff between the United States and China and liken it to the Soviet Union and the United States. But the fact of the matter is that the United States is a lot more intertwined, if I can use that word, with China in terms of business and trade. First, they'll have to, in fact, cut that umbilical cord.
Vineet, I want to say that the United States and Soviet Union had what I call Cold War 1.0. And now China and the United States have Cold War 2.0. The point is very simple. When you are you believe in the Indo-Pacific century, and that is the reality of today, that the Indo-Pacific century, or you remain wedded to the previous century, which is the Atlanticist century. If you're an Atlanticist, you will still believe that you can do a deal with China. Now, for example, I was just listening to a video on the chief editor of The Economist talking about, why can't the Americans and the Chinese sit down and be nice to each other and work out a deal? I mean, the poor lady doesn't understand the nature of the threat that China is posing to the United States' existence as a free society and as a coherent society. And of course, the Chinese are very well aware today of what the United States, especially under Trump, are posing to them. But Europe is not aware, because Europe would continue to like to be Atlanticist, where the threat is from Russia rather than from China. Donald Trump has very correctly said the threat is from China. So far as Biden is concerned, many of the names in his foreign policy think tanks are, frankly, if I may say, the complete Atlanticist crowd. They are still in the romantic world of the post-World War II era, and they don't realize a new war era has started. And of course, the reality is that the hard fact about Chinese activity in the United States will drive policy. So I think Biden's pro-China stand, if it is ever there, will last for maybe a year at most, because before he becomes even more hardline than Trump is. I want to point out finally, Hong Kong is critical to the PRC. Hong Kong has been the window through which the PRC accumulated dollars. When, especially after 2017, the trade embargo on China, especially after that, the Hong Kong has been very important to ensure a steady supply of dollars to China. That's why, for example, China makes Pakistan pay in dollars for the Belt and Road project. China is desperate for dollars. It doesn't want India to pay in RMB or in rupees. It wants dollars, and there's a tremendous shortage of dollars. And these steps, as Sumit especially will know, will constrict the flow of dollars to China. And this is already having an effect on the Chinese economy and will have a bigger effect in times to come.
Right, absolutely. And Ambassador Vora, do you think that China is still in the midst of misunderstanding the US response? Perhaps China feels that the United States is perhaps responding to its own decline in power across the world. And no matter how Beijing behaves, the US will continue to lash out.
Entirely correct what you have just said, as Mr. Ranade said, Professor Nalapat said, and also as General Asana has said and Mr. P. The Chinese Communist Party is in deep trouble. Xi Jinping is now seeing the revolt beginning against him. People are beginning to question his judgment. He will land up in the dustbin of history very, very quickly. The Americans mean business. Their business is business, and they are hurting China very badly. As you know, because of the Chinese virus, the Chinese economy crashed or contracted by 6.8% in Q1. When the Q2 figures come out, if they're accurate, it will probably be a bigger contraction. Li Keqiang, the Prime Minister in May, last week of May, addressing the so-called parliament, said 600 million Chinese live on less than $130 per month. The first remarkable admission by a prime minister of grinding poverty in China, and they have to pay over $100 to rent one room in a major city. So he's talked about all this, but the important thing, sir, just one point, when you're preventing Chinese nationals from traveling to the US, particular Communist Party members, it's going to hurt what we jokingly refer to as birth tourism in the United States. Every year, an estimated 30 to 50,000 Chinese mothers go off to the United States, to paying up to $40,000, $50,000 to have their baby there, because the United States follows this system of jus soli, which means citizenship by birth. So we find this very, very interesting. A lot of them come from very, very influential Chinese families. They don't want their kids to be born in China to get a life outside. There's even an agency in Shanghai, this might amuse you, called Good American Baby. And they help the Chinese mothers to go off to the United States to have their children there. So all this is going to suffer, sir. China is suffering. Chinese are hurting badly. And if Xi Jinping thinks that he's going to use the American pressure on them to rally domestic support, no, sir. No, sir. This is a cardinal mistake. This is the ongoing march of policy.
Okay. Right. Sumit, perhaps China was also banking upon the fact that, when these applications were banned in India and what the United States is doing to China, there would be a call for de-escalation, especially by the corporate echelons. But that also did not happen. Thus, it has disappointed China greatly.
I think, Vineet, the point here is that it is not a question of business dominance. I say the Chinese dominance is not economic. It comes because political, then they want to control your mind and your body to a level they want to predict us all. So the world has seen this, and this is admitted by the NSA of US himself. So the point is not here what do Chinese want and why should corporates react to it, because they can see what Chinese companies are playing. They can see the havoc they're playing. Instantly, I shatter to understand one thing. You talk of Chinese debt, $50 trillion, which is 55% of the global GDP. Now, and their foreign exchange reserves are 3 trillion. What they declare, I don't know how much actual money they have. Now they go to Turkey, they are writing them half a $1 trillion check. They are promising a $500 billion check to Bangladesh. They're $500 billion to Iran, $500 billion to Sri Lanka. Now, incidentally, where are these checks being written from? Is there a Kangal Bank of China who's going to finance all this? Because this, with a 50 trillion debt, 55% of the global GDP, 3 trillion in cash reserves, you are promising everybody in the world $500 billion. Where is this money going to end from? Because I think Xi Jinping sees China is going to break. The cash flows are very bad. And if you at this point of time break his cash flow, whatever he is able to manage superficially will come crumbling down as a house of cards, because now it is practically impossible to sustain Chinese economy with this kind of debt and this kind of foreign reserve. Look at our debt, $1.5 trillion, that's all. Now, how are we told Chinese economy is strong? How are we told Chinese companies are big? How are we told they have very robust economy, they're doing very well? By which logic on this earth? Unless and until you tell me they follow accounting system of Mars. By that logic, I don't know. I have no preview to that. So the world has seen that, China has seen that, Xi Jinping knows China is going to fail. He's going for the last bluff.
Okay, let me get a quick response from Mr. Ranade and then the General Asthana as well. We're running out of time. Mr. Ranade, obviously the US and China rivalry has its pluses, but on the downside, there is also a worry that global supply chains are going to be seriously impacted because unlike the Cold War between the United States and Russia, which had nothing to do with economics or finance, this one does.
I would call it a course correction. In the first place, we've been led by the nose by economists who've been talking about global trade, and they never looked at the fact of over-dependence on a single country, which has proved itself to be hostile in number of situations over decades, and which has not hesitated to use trade as a weapon. And that, I'm talking about the Chinese. So here, if we look at India, 80% of our APIs, which used to be manufactured here, are now farmed out to the Chinese. We are importing it from them. Why were the pharma industry allowed to do that? Or why did they do it? Because the APIs there, manufactured there, are slightly cheaper. Similarly, so many other things. I mean, in India, we had certain level of production of turbines, other precision machine goods. Now we don't have that because the Chinese are supplying them and our order books are not full. So the companies are folding up. Now, this is happening not only here, it's happening everywhere else. And so what is happening is a course correction. The countries have decided that they must not put all their eggs in one basket. They must have diversified sources of supply. That's one. The second is what Trump is doing. He's saying disconnect, decouple from the Chinese. So he's imposing taxes. He's threatening the companies. Some of them are moving, some of them are not moving. But time will ultimately see that the people have to look, the companies have to look for a market. If the Chinese do not allow foreign companies to sell within China, and a time will come that they will have to stop it because they're trying to promote their own consumption, in that case, then they will have to look somewhere else. India is a huge market. They probably come here or look somewhere else. But I think that this is a course correction. This decoupling or supply chains is not really tangible. It has to change and it will change. You will see it happening, in fact, faster than what we think.
General Asthana, obviously a lot is going on and a lot is still expected. The US elections take place in November. Donald Trump could, pull out any kind of a trick from his hat, but at the same time, China still seems to be undeterred by all these, aggressive postures which the US has put forth. What's their backup?
Xi Jinping has no choice but to prove, or shall we say, to pose a brave front. Because that is the only thing which can give him the nationalism support in the mainland. So that is the compulsion, unfortunately. As we panelists were talking about economy, let me just add one point here. The global trust on Chinese economy is also not there. It's a total distrust. There is a Chinese bubble. The amount of debt they have, considering that, the number of checks which they are cutting all over the BRI countries, they are not going to get encashed. So that is the situation which the BRI countries also must know. Now, second point I must say, the immediate reaction yesterday in South China Morning Post, there was an article to say that all the Chinese origin Americans are the biggest critics of China. And the reason is very simple, because they understood this system. They understand how much anarchy and how much there is nothing like judiciary there, and what kind of surveillance. The surveillance budget of China is more than anybody else in the world. And this surveillance is of their own people, whether within the country or outside. So this is the kind of country which you are dealing with. And certainly no society is happy with that. Unfortunately, they were tolerating it because they were getting good economic returns and they were getting I think, good life. So that's why they tolerated it. But certainly this bubble is going to break. So this is something called as writing on the wall, which perhaps, and US also in one of their discussions, which I was hearing in one of the topmost think tanks in the world, You have to credit them that in last 100 years, they have broken so many regimes. They have broken USSR. And they say in no uncertain terms that they still have that power with them. As of now, all US actions are little slow. Let the elections be over, the actions will be much faster.
All right. Well, on that note, thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of this amazing show.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.